Clark sisters don't think about vocal technique. They're beyond that. They are masters. But we're going to look exactly into what it is that they do so that we can better appreciate their mastery of the human voice. But first, let's take a listen.
I want you to feel free to get up. If you're in your living room, no matter where you are, ain't no harm. Praise God! I better leave that alone. Do me a favor,
don't
will
leave
you?
it alone.
Turn around and grab 3 people by the hand and tell them that Jesus brought the sunshine. Tell somebody Jesus brought the sunshine.
Oh, we got drums now. Takes a lot for me to bounce my head. Fantastic. So just to briefly describe what was happening there to get that rhythm that she was getting out of the voice, even though she was on vowels, right? It's one thing to go, but she was going, Let's talk about how that works and why it's really important. You can do this. It's easy. Hold your breath. You feel how that's closing right there? That closure is going to be what we use to get that percussive element on even vowels. So remember, we were holding our breath. Now we're just going to make a sound. This is what's happening. Whenever we have percussion, we have a really quick attack. Not always, but usually. So what you see right here, this flatness, this is what's called an envelope. Envelope has this flat line, which means the sound comes in like that. How is that happening? Just because we hold our breath and we make sound. Whenever we have percussion, we have a really quick attack. Sound comes in like that. How is that happening? Just because we hold our breath and we make sound. Hold your breath. You feel how that's closing right there? That closure is going to be what we use to get that percussive element on even vowels. This is called a glottal. You are holding your breath so the folds come together, because that's usually their intended role, is actually they're a sphincter. Get your mind out of the gutter if it's there. So in order to make sense of this, let's get a handle on how the vocal folds usually come together to sing a melody. There's something called the Bernoulli effect. If I blow into these two things right here side by side, you'd think that they would spread apart, but the opposite happens. The air pushes through that empty space, and that creates a vacuum, or at least it would if nature didn't abhor a vacuum. So the cards close. This is how the vocal folds work. And so we can get different attacks depending on what we do with our vocal folds. So because the folds come together based entirely on how I am breathing, watch what I do here. This is called an aspirate gradual. See how it's like a V, right? It gradually comes up. Whereas when I'm talking with different consonants, you can see that envelope, that attack, changes dramatically. And so she's using this to create music. Mic technique going side. You know you're in it when there's a stank face. Ooh, bass player, okay. I just want to quickly point out here, they're doing something called blending. The voices blend together. Now, ordinarily, that's actually quite difficult to do, so people compromise their own voice. They will bring and rein their voice in so that people match with one another. So this is how something would traditionally be blended. It sounds sonorous. It sounds nice when they are together. However, when we take them apart individually, I don't know about y'all, but that is not a convincing sound. And if I were praising Jesus at the top of my lungs, that is absolutely an unacceptable sound. Now, when you're belting, it's a significantly harder thing to do to blend. This actually took me quite a few tries. I am not a particularly rich voice. That's a different kind of belt than I usually do, which is say I don't belt at all. Usually. So what's hard about what you just heard in terms of the belting blend that I did is my belting technique is not stellar. My posture tends to have issues, and that really ruins the depth of sound. So to have a good belting sound up high is a challenge. So blending is challenging because you have to blend and you have to sound good as an individual if you are blending with belts. So they need to be stellar as individuals, and they need to have the ability to slightly adjust according to what is going on around them. Blending with belting is extremely difficult. I mean, just listen to that blend. It's so good. And you can even here's what's really cool too. Belting generally is something you only do when you go up pretty high. It's kind of difficult to have a convincing tone when you're in your lower range. So not only are they blending when they're belting, but if you listen, those who take the lower parts in the harmony are blending with what is more traditional, which is a thyroid cartilage tilt. That happens, and then the vibrato kicks in. So that's how you know that that's what they're doing. So let's take another listen to that. You can hear that on the low end, right?
How y'all feel? I tell you, we got a live audience here tonight, boy. A lot of spirit out there. Do you mind singing a little bit, Tommy? Okay, thank you. How many sopranos I got out there? No, Jesus. Thank you, sopranos. How many altos I got? Thank you, altos.
I love how the audience just like
How many
knows.
tenors I got? No, Jesus. Thank you, tenors. All right. I want y'all to let all of Chicago know that Jesus. All out there on the left, all those out there, I want you to let them know too that Jesus comes first. All right, here we go, sopranos. Here's your part. You made my day. Come on, sopranos, let me hear you all over the field. Come on.
I love how everyone in the audience just like knows how to help. It's like, ooh, okay, the harmony. All right. Yeah, you teach them. So I just also want to point out, she is using belting technique. She's using belting technique to talk to the audience and be heard. So she's projecting over everything. She doesn't need to change the mic settings or anything like that. See? Oh, okay, we're going to come back to that one. That's important. I just wanted to describe the action of belting. A lot of people, they'll say it's controlled screaming. That is not true at all. Belting is what happens when what's called the cricoid cartilage tilts upwards. It's the base of the larynx. That is what we call larynx Olympics. She belts. So right here, what you're going to hear is she's going to belt, and she's going to change the vowels in order to get a really cool effect, like to change the rhythm without using a lot of glottal anything. It's very hard to do with belt. In fact, I would imagine it's actually quite dangerous to do with the belt. So that's not what she's going to do, but she's going to give rhythm and life to this by using vowels. Right? So that's the belt. Next, she goes into tilting the thyroid cartilage, but stiffens it so that straight tone is maintained and that there's no vibrato, unwanted vibrato. So then she goes from the thyroid tilt into the growl. So this is why I call it the larynx Olympics, okay? When you belt, your folds are fat, and they're together. So she does this, and then she goes into the thyroid cartilage tilt, which is where you stretch your vocal folds. And if you look at my arms, they're kind of tensing and doing all this. That's why vibrato happens. So in order for her to have this and the depth of sound that comes with the thyroid cartilage, she needs to stiffen to where there's no movement. Quite difficult to do, as you can see from my arms. Next, she gets rid of all of it so that the folds are really flappy. Why? Because she's going to do a growl, and it's going to be rad. She's going to push her tongue back just a little bit, which is what you do for a growl, okay? And that will put the false folds against the epiglottis, which is a big piece of cartilage that we use when we swallow in order to protect our air versus our food intake, right? We swallow, epiglottis comes down. So by pushing the tongue back just a tiny bit, we end up resting on the epiglottis some of the things we use to make noise, and then those rattle. Ooh. Whenever I do this, I'm like that. Ooh. That glottal stuff again, right? Oh. She is with a nail. Day. I sound like a bad Axl Rose when I try it. Imagine having the charisma, the passion, the conviction, and the talent to be able to move an entire room into doing something that they also want to do. They signed up for it. You don't accidentally go to a Clark Sisters concert and be like, oh, I just didn't know it was religious. I had no idea. And to me, this is what makes gospel so absolutely compelling. She is giving a sermon, right? She's giving a sermon. No ego in this, right? It's all about her beliefs, her religious beliefs, and Jesus. And then the audience is there to do the same thing. Like I said, right? You would never go to a Clark Sisters concert. Oh, I don't know, you're going to talk about Jesus. I had no idea. And so to serve that audience, the Clark Sisters are there, and the audience is there, and they join in mass, quite literally in mass. And that's what makes gospel special.